Thank you for your interest in volunteering at the Humboldt County Animal Shelter. This video is meant to serve as a supplement to the required in-person orientation for new volunteers, not as a replacement, or it can be a refresher for current volunteers. Volunteers make a huge difference in the lives of the animals at the shelter through walking, training, socializing, advocating, and much more. Animals arrive at the shelter through one of several circumstances. They are picked up as a stray or abandoned animal, or they are taken under custody of the sheriff at the time of an arrest, or if an owner dies without somebody to take the animal. Once in the shelter, an animal is kept for a mandatory 4-business-day legal hold, which allows owners to reclaim stray pets. After the legal hold, dogs are temperament tested to determine if they pass a set of requirements for being adoptable. Volunteers mainly work with the animals that are in the adoptable section of the shelter. The volunteer program is coordinated by Mara and Jim, seen here. They also run a nonprofit rescue group called Redwood Pals Rescue, whose mission is to help the dogs at the shelter both adoptable and rescue. Mara and Jim collaborate closely with the shelter to help the dogs that are deemed rescue. These are dogs who do not pass their temp test or are too shy to be put in the adoptable wing. Their goal is to help dogs to become adoptable through the shelter, or, when that is not possible, to find another placement for them. You will see Mara and Jim walking the rescue dogs during your time there. So that's a little background on the shelter and Redwood Pals Rescue. Let's cover the shelter volunteer requirements and procedures now. There is a fair amount of info here, so please ask the volunteer coordinator or shelter staff person if you are ever unsure of the correct procedure in any given situation. Let's start with who can volunteer. Only volunteers 18 and over who have been cleared by the Sheriff's Department and have attended an orientation are allowed to go past the lobby doors and to handle the animals. This means no guests, please. You can always encourage your friends to pick up an application and join you as a volunteer, though. The shelter schedule will determine when you can come volunteer. The shelter is open to the public Monday through Friday and closed to the public on the weekends. Volunteers, however, can come work with the animals 7 days a week. In general, volunteers are welcome from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., except on Tuesdays and Thursdays when volunteers can stay as late as 7. Please respect staff activities such as kennel cleaning and pay attention to the time the animals need to be returned to their kennels at the end of the day. Direction will be provided as to how to get into the shelter on the weekends when it is closed to the public. Let's go over some general volunteer protocols. Volunteers need to wear full-length pants and closed-toed shoes. When you arrive to the shelter to volunteer, your first stop should be the volunteer room. This room is our communication hub. Please check for any messages or issues noted there. Volunteers must sign in on the sign-in sheet, put on a name tag, and grab a walkie-talkie. You'll also find kennel keys in the volunteer room, which you'll need if you plan to walk dogs. These items need to be returned before you leave. Only certain areas of the shelter where adoptable animals are kept are open to volunteers, so please observe all no entrance or paid staff only signs, and when in doubt, just ask. Last, as a side note, adoptable animals and the current month's adoptees are written down on a whiteboard in the lobby. This is a nice place to see if the animals you've gotten to know during your volunteer hours have been adopted. Volunteers should be aware of some important rules for all animals at the shelter. We'll be covering specific guidelines around working with both cats and dogs, but before we do that, here are a few things that are important regardless of animal type. First, adoptable animals may have variations of a "do not handle" sign on their kennel due to a recent spay or neuter, an injury, or an adoption in progress. Please observe the requests on the sign. Also, if a dog or cat gets loose in or out of the shelter, use the walkie-talkie to say "loose dog" or "loose cat" and state your location as best you can so staff or other volunteers can come to help. And last, we ask you refer any questions from the public regarding adoption fees or requirements to paid staff. Interested volunteers may be allowed to assist in showing the dogs or cats to potential adopters once they are familiar with shelter situations and the adoptable animals. Now let's go over some things that should be reported to shelter staff. Volunteers play an important role by serving as extra eyes and ears among the animals. As such, please report the following if you see any of them: any problems with leashes, collars, or other equipment, or any signs of illness or injury in the animals. In addition, please let staff know about any injuries that happen to you. Okay, you've made it this far, so now let's cover rules for handling cats. The cat area has one large main room with kennels along the walls and several smaller rooms off the main one for kittens or for cats that need their own space. There may be handwritten notes on each cat's kennel card regarding personality traits or preferences, such as loves to be brushed. Volunteers can take one cat out of its cage in the main room at a time, but you may find many cats out at once when you arrive. These have been let out by staff who have determined that they can play nice together. It is important that volunteers use hand sanitizer between the handling of cats in different cages to help prevent feline infections. Please use sanitizer before entering the kitten room as well. The cat room may be closed to volunteers if upper respiratory virus is present among the cats, so watch for notices on the door. All right, those are the main points for handling cats. So now let's cover dogs. We aim to get every dog out for a quality walk once a day. On days when there are lots of volunteers, the dogs certainly appreciate second walks. We use the dog walking log in the hallway by the whiteboard to track who has been walked. Please use your initials or first name to mark off each dog that you have walked yourself, and pay particular attention to the day of the week and the kennel number. There is space on the log to mark first and second walks of the day. Adoptable sections include DS 1 through 6 for smaller dogs, and DA 1 through 18, which is the main section. Sometimes there are dogs held in other parts of the building, but this will be noted in the hall near and/or on the clipboard. You'll find signs on each kennel that state the experience level recommended for dog walkers: novice in green, intermediate in blue, and experienced in yellow. For safety reasons, please do not handle a dog labeled experienced until you have been cleared by one of the volunteer coordinators to walk that dog. The signs also have info that tells walkers and prospective adopters about the dog, including whether they are housebroken, personality traits, and commands the dog knows. Volunteers are welcome to add helpful info to those signs. Leashes and collars are provided at the shelter for walking dogs. There should be a leash clipped to each kennel, and each dog will have a martingale collar on, unless a behavioral or medical condition requires otherwise. No outside collars or leashes should be used. Your kennel key will unlock any of the kennel padlocks. After unlocking, hang the padlock on the kennel, enter the dog kennel, and close the door behind you before leashing the dog for a walk. The latch mechanism can take a little practice. Here is a slow motion shot of how it works. Note that the door can open both ways, but please open it so that it swings into the kennel to minimize potential for a dog to get loose. One volunteer can walk one dog at a time. Two volunteers may walk two dogs together if they are either kenneled together or they are noted as walking buddies on the whiteboard in the hallway. You will be shown the traffic pattern for walking dogs during the in-person orientation, but in general, you should go out the closest kennel door, around the front of the building, and then back in through the door originally exited. When on the road, we ask that you walk facing the traffic for safety, and please keep space when passing another dog. Only one dog at a time is allowed in the playpen, unless otherwise authorized and accompanied by paid staff or the volunteer coordinator. You do not need to scoop poop when walking on the road, but please scoop poop in the playpen to keep it clean. Last, on rainy days, downpours prohibit lengthy walks and are a better time for potty breaks and inside play. Light rain is fine for walking, and towels are provided for drying dogs off. Now that you know the rules, let's talk about some best practices when handling dogs. How much training you want to do with dogs is really up to you, but we ask at a minimum that you do not encourage bad behavior. This could be jumping up, mouthiness, leash biting or tugging, lunging for balls or toys, or just pulling out of control. As a part of this, when using treats or other rewards, be mindful of what you are rewarding. For example, if a dog is resisting walking on the leash, make sure you are rewarding when they are moving forward and not when they stop. If you ever need help with how to encourage good behaviors, just ask. There are several trainers who occasionally lead sessions to address specific issues, and we have written and video materials to provide guidance on dog handling. One of the best and easiest ways to help dogs beyond walking them is to encourage calmness in the kennel. The more we can get dogs used to being calm when people walk by, the better they will present when potential adopters come to see them. As you are walking down Kennel Row, offer treats to dogs who keep all 4 feet on the ground and stay quiet as you approach. Last and most important, you should never handle a dog that you do not feel comfortable with. It doesn't matter if the dog has not been walked that day. If you are not calm and comfortable handling him or her, please skip them. And if the discomfort starts after you are already out of the kennel, then turn around and take them back. There are several other ways volunteers can help out with dogs, beyond providing daily walks. You will find out more about these options as you get familiar with the shelter, but they include some of the following: raking chips in the play yard to keep them from piling up in the back, taking approved dogs to weekend pack walks or training classes, doing scent work with dogs, taking approved dogs to events to be seen with Adopt Me vests, and even taking approved dogs home for sleepovers. And these are just a few. Once again, ask if you have any questions or need further clarification on any aspect of volunteering. Other volunteers can be very helpful as well, so don't be afraid to use them as a resource. Well, thanks again for being a volunteer at the Humboldt County Animal Shelter, and we look forward to seeing you with the animals.